The greatest success we've had as educators in a building when I was principal came when teachers recognized a challenge in the building, and then they worked together with us, the administration, to identify what's going on, why it's going on, and how we were going to fix it. And, one of the things that always arises is the instructional core, right? Mm-hmm. Students, teachers, and curriculum together in the educational process. And if you're bringing high quality curricular materials to the classroom, and you're working strategically with teachers to improve instruction, and kids are engaged, then you're going to get good outcomes.
Right.
But if one of those three things is not in place, then there's an issue.
Hi guys, welcome our fellow educators and school leaders. I'm Avinash, co-founder at TomoClub. And we do this TomoClub podcast series to understand the US school system as well as the future of education. And to add to a long list of discussion that we have done, today we have a special guest, the Superintendent Vito Perrone, from the Hampshire Regional School District. And today's topic is how to create a culture of trust across a district. So it's going to be fantastic because building a culture of trust is not just about school district, but in general for other organizations as well. And before we jump into the discussion of the topic, I would really welcome Superintendent Vito. And I would love if you can, give a brief introduction about yourself and your journey.
Sure. My name is Vito Perrone. I've been in education for 32 years now. Started teaching in Carson City, Nevada. I was an English teacher at a high school. Moved to Northern Nevada Correctional Center, where I taught literature and English and GED to adult men in the Northern Nevada area, where we had inmates from all across the United States, mostly Western states, but it was a very diverse demographic, and I really saw the reality of correctional education and the minorities in the general population of the United States are really the majority in prisons. And it really opened my eyes to the realities of correctional education. It was an amazing experience for me as an educator. And it's really where I learned that you have to make connections and build relationships with individuals if you're going to gain trust, if you're going to build culture. And that really is the foundation of the work that I've started to do as a superintendent here in the Hampshire Regional 5 districts.
No, absolutely. I love the journey. What got you in education in the first place?
Well, it's an interesting story. I played football at the University of Massachusetts back in the 80s, and I had some tryouts in the NFL, didn't go anywhere, and ended up playing over in Europe, American football in Italy, and I started coaching the youth in Pescara, Italy, and the interactions and the connections I was making with the young kids that were interested in football really drove me to go back to school, to want to get my master's, to teach. And so that experience as a coach, as a player, really led on my leadership journey and guided me to the next step in life, which was I wanted to be a teacher based on that interaction, those relationships that I started to build as a coach.
That's interesting. I think started from an athletic background and getting into academics. Is that reason that, that initial connect that you found with students back in Italy and then you continued your journey, is that reason still valid? Is it still keeping you going in education, or has it changed over the years?
No, it absolutely is. It's really the basis. And as I said, the foundation for how you build culture is you have to make connections. You have to build relationships with stakeholders, with teachers, with students, with select boards, finance committees, school committees. And so in order to build relationships, you have to kind of put yourself out there. You have to be present. You have to listen. You have to hear what people have to say. And those are the things that really deepen connections and build trust. You have to be transparent in your interactions with people. And, one of the things that I've tried to do is really keep things simple. And so I have what I call the 4 C's. And those C's are communication, collaboration, community, and compassion. And those 4 C's kind of guide the work that I do as a leader. And so I have to make sure that I'm communicating the roles and responsibilities of the central office, the roles and responsibilities of principals, students, parents in the educational dynamic. And
Right.
so that everybody understands what their expectations are in their role in education.
No, absolutely. I'm glad that reason is still very intact and it's just growing stronger. It's really beautiful. Um, Also, in a school district, as you said, the trust isn't just about the teacher and the student. I think it's also a web of connections, that has to hold together in town, staff, administration, teachers, parents. And I was reading about your district that it's basically a combination of 5 towns in a way. So, how do you build a single culture of trust among the communities that have different priorities and different tax bases also? So, how do you keep that intact?
Yeah, it's difficult because each of the 5 towns in the districts has its own school committee, its own select board, finance committee, etc. And as you said, the town's tax base funds the schools in concert with state funding and federal funding, but the majority of our funding comes from the local populations. And it's difficult because we have 5 diverse types of communities. And so really we have to ensure that we are communicating with our stakeholders in each of those communities, that we're finding the through points, the cohesion points that cut across the districts, but that we're paying attention to the unique challenges that each of those districts has. So a common theme of collaboration and communication is important, but it's also a recognition of the needs of the students in the seats, the teachers in the classrooms, the principals in the buildings. And it's really kind of in that order, right? I try to make the decisions, or we try to make decisions through that filter. What's best for students? What's best for teachers? What's best for programs, schools, and then the district level?
No, I agree with you. I think it's all about the transparent communication. But again, hats off to you because how you are, stitching them together and still keeping the control as well as the communication similar across the 5 different towns is no easy job. So 100% cool.
No, it's challenging. I appreciate that, but one of the things you just said really kind of resonated with me, and you said control, and really I try to flip that, because when I was interviewed for this position, there's some unique challenges that are raised with respect to financial regularity and financial accounting across 5 districts, and there were some specific accounting issues that arose because of the complication of the system. And so I was hired really to fix it. And I said in my interview, I can't do this alone. I said, but we can do this together. And one of the big things that I really, truly believe as an educator, as a coach, as a father, is that we have to empower people to lead themselves. And when teachers feel the trust of empowerment, and they're able to be a part of the solution, when students feel empowered to be a voice for guidance, direction in their own education, when principals feel empowered to collaborate across districts and schools, then people really feel that they are engaged and relevant in the process. And that's key, I think. If you want to talk about control, it's really giving it up that really resonates with the people with whom you work.
Oh, I love that. I think you did clarify something which I inherently assumed is important in managing a school district. It's actually, how do you keep the duties above, or like a feeling of service above control? I think that's definitely a interesting perspective. Um, so when you inherited this role, right? Uh, what were the first signals of trust you looked for, and what warning signs were told to you? That it needed work.
Mhm. Well, one of the things I should disclose, full transparency, I lived in West Hampton, which is one of
Okay.
the communities. Okay. Though I worked as an educator in other communities around the area. But I lived in West Hampton. So my children went to one of the elementary schools and graduated from the high school. So I knew the system, and I was aware of the strengths of the teachers in those schools and the strength of the rural regional communities. So I had a little upper hand, I feel, when I came into the role.
Right.
People knew of me because I was a principal in East Hampton, which is right down the hill from where we are. And I was a coach of the football team. So people knew of me. And once they were able to really get to know me and I got to know them, I think that helped to build trust, to at least open the door for trust to grow. And that's really important because you can have that foundation built, but if you don't follow through on what you say you're going to do, then things start to erode. If you don't do what you say you're going to do, then again, things start to erode. So it's really important that you bring yourself and you put yourself out there, you make yourself vulnerable, and that gains people's trust. And that builds relationships. And, when I worked in the prison in Northern Nevada, there was a saying that the prisoners had, and it wasn't, do you hear me? It's, do you feel me?
Mhm.
And that's what they said to me. And I was like, I thought about that. I was like, yeah, I do. I feel you. I understand what you're saying, and it's more of that empathetic connection than just a cursory listen. Right. So I really try to feel where people are coming from. So if a parent comes into my office and they're upset, and I try to really engage with that feeling that they're bringing to the table, help them de-escalate the emotions, and then get to the problem, so that we can work together. Right there, it is. Empowering someone to solve a problem with me, as opposed to relying on the control of a leader to fix it, because that's a really hard thing to do. You can't do that much anymore, is fix something in isolation. It's all about connections, collaboration, trust. And in order to do that, you really have to engage with people, put yourself out there.
No, I agree with you 100%. But what did you do when you joined as a superintendent? What was the first thing that you did that was the foundational part in building that trust?
uh, I, my team, the first thing I had to do, there was no leadership team in the district. They hired me, and then I had to build a team of business directors, assistant superintendent, director of pupil services. And so I had to build a team. And then once we had the team, then we took the team on the road. We called it the Central Office Roadshow. We went to each school. We introduced ourselves to the teachers. We were present in the buildings. And really, it's about being out there and making sure you're making connections with those stakeholders who are integral to moving the educational process forward. And so that was really the first thing that we did. And then we started putting communications out to parents and stakeholders, and introducing ourselves, and sharing our vision, and sharing the challenges and what our thoughts were about how we could solve those things, and what we needed from them, from you as a father, or you as a teacher, or you as a student, to really move us forward.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I think you went out and introduced yourself in a way that's something not a lot of superintendents do, because it's confined job to the office, and there's limited people interaction because there's so much to do. But you took an extra mile and did that. That's definitely appreciable. Um, but what do you think destroys the trust in the ecosystem? Like, what's one thing that you would say is that you should definitely avoid as a school leader?
Well, I tell you, I just to pivot back for one step. The other thing that we did was we made sure that we attended, right? So if there was a performance of elementary school students in singing, we would be there. If there was a game at the soccer field, we would be there. If there was the prom, we would be there. You know, so it was really being part of the life of the community. That's really what it's about for me. And that's the fun stuff. Because as you said, it's no fun being in your office and locking, you know, just focusing on the challenges and the problems and the issues. Those are going to happen and you have to deal with them, but you have to find time to be out and about, to be involved. So in the thing that might derail a connection or derail the growth of trust is not doing what you said you're going to do, or not following through on a commitment to someone, or not being present in a conversation. Because a lot of times the answer that I have to give is no, right? But that doesn't mean I can't sit down and explain the policy or the mass general law or the practice that founds my answer, right? So that people may not like the answer, but they respect how it was communicated. They respect that you're consistent in your answering, right? So that you don't get a different answer than Mrs. Smith does, right? It's a consistent application of whatever we're talking about, school policy or mass general law or just district practice.
No, you did mention about the fact that your leadership style is not about exerting control, but giving the control to the people about their job. Can you describe about your leadership style much more in terms of how do you get things done? What's your method of feedback? What's your method of passing on the ownership? Can you explain a lot more about your leadership style?
Sure. You know, you mentioned before that that as an athlete, right, that's where things started for me, and it did, and that's where I learned a lot of the lessons in my life, how to persevere, right, how to be a part of a team, how to reflect on performance and improve performance, because as a player, you have to at times watch a film and watch the steps you take to make a play, right? And similarly, you have to reflect on that performance and say, well, if I had done X instead of Y, I would have done this. And so as an educator, you similarly have to do that, whether you're teaching in the classroom or you're a principal or a superintendent. How did I do in that interaction? How did I do with that plan that we created? And then reflect on my role in that. What can I do? You know, kind of a growth mindset, the Carol Dweck thought process, right? What can I do to improve my performance? And so I bring that coaching athletic model to leadership, and part of that is empowering a team to succeed, right? Is recognizing the talents and the skills necessary to get a job done, but often understanding that you're not working in isolation. We are going to do that. And so in order to ensure that we're moving forward, we have to get feedback on the process, the work that we're doing. We have to reflect on the work that we're doing. So the ed eval system is integrally important to moving forward as an educator. And part of that process is really providing feedback that's viable, setting goals that are authentic and relevant, and then measuring as a person, as an educator, how well I did to get myself there, how well we did to get ourselves there. So there's a lot of parallels, I would suggest, between the team and coaching and leadership. And that's what I bring to being a superintendent. And for better or worse, that's how I've been operating for my 32 years in education. And I have to think about what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and then what can be done to improve what I'm doing and how I'm doing it in order to gain the outcomes that are our goals.
Interesting angle. Although I have another um, a parallel thought process around it, that educators in general are very optimistic people. Whenever they have to give feedback to the student, they don't try to pin them down, they don't try to give them a reality check, but rather give them an optimistic point of view. That even if, let's say, what I have seen, that if a student do some bad work, rather than calling it bad, they said you could do better. So it's a kind of optimistic ring to the solution, to the situation. And when you are at the leadership position, you can't sugarcoat, you can't put a positive ring to a lot of things. And you have to do confrontations, you have to do performance reviews, you have to maybe sometimes give harsh feedback. So how are you handling about confrontations and these difficult discussions?
Yeah, I think that goes back to trust, honestly. So if I've built trust with you as your evaluator, right, and you're in the classroom and you're doing your thing, and we trust each other, we're able to have conversations objectively about your performance. Right? It doesn't have to be harsh. It has to be objective. So if I'm a teacher looking at a student's work and the work in total has a positive effect, that's great. But I have to also, as an English teacher, look at the grammar, look at the punctuation, look at the style, and give objective, relevant feedback to a student so that they can improve. Right? It's not harsh when you objectively provide feedback on a product, right? And the students, to be honest, students are looking for it. They want that feedback. And so too do teachers. There's no group of people that I've ever worked with that have been harder on themselves than teachers. And they want, especially the best teachers want feedback. They want you to be objective, constructively critical of the work they're doing in order to reach the students, because that's the goal, right? Improving outcomes. That's the goal. And I think, again, I'd want to flip that mentality about EdEval. It is constructive criticism. It is objective. It's not harsh. So I go into the classroom and I deliver a lesson, but my questioning wasn't where it needed to be to get the kids where they need to be. And that's the feedback I, as a teacher, want to hear. So you're not going to break my heart by telling me what I already know, right? So you're right. Dr. Smith, my questions weren't where they needed to be to get the kids to think to the depth that they needed to think to really understand that poem or that novel or that you name it. So I want to flip those things about control. It's not about control. It's about empowerment. It's not about harsh input. It's about feedback and constructive criticism, objectivity. Those are the things I think you're able to establish when people trust you, when you've gained or developed, I should say, a relationship with someone.
See, I agree with all your points, but whatever you are saying makes a lot of sense when I'm in a rational state of mind. For example, even if you are being 100% objective, you have no ulterior motive to make me feel bad, but genuinely curious. But if I am not in the state of mind to take that feedback, I can take your objectivity and start looking at them as an acquisition, or I can look them as in a way to make me be judged. So even though I know I trust me, right? It happens even with the best of us, right?
Yeah.
And that is the critical time when it actually matters of what you mentioned, trust, right? It's that moment where over and above, even if because sometimes I have developed affection to my work in certain degree that I'm not in a mood to take a feedback, right? I'm expecting in a mood to get appreciated, rather than being asked questions. So how do you deal with that situation? That's something that was my initial context that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, no, that's really a great point. One of the things that I've really tried to do is always, and maybe this is what you were talking about before, is always find those things that were done well, because there's always something that was done well. So the commendations are important, right? The compliment is important as long as it's based in fact.
Yeah.
But there has to be balanced by recommendations. So in my observations and evaluations, I'm going to balance commendations and recommendations and really focus on either a goal that the teacher set with respect to the lesson or a professional practice goal that they've set previously in the year or a student learning goal, and really bring it back to what they said that they are trying to work on, right? And so in that moment, I get it. You get a little defensive when someone's calling into question your performance in the job that you love with the kids that you really want to do the best you can for. But we're professionals, right? And that's one of the things that people often forget is teachers are professionals, just like doctors are professionals, just like lawyers are professionals. And I always talk to teachers, especially when they're getting defensive about a surgeon and saying, how does best practice spread in the medical field? Well, if a doctor has perfected a technique that's new, they don't just close their doors and hide it. They bring other doctors into their theater of surgery, and she shows them how to do it, right? And then that best practice spreads. And that's what I try to do with teachers too, is so if Vito is feeling defensive over a strategy or something that he's using, and I give feedback and it's not received well, I would say, hey, go check out Mrs. Brown. She's doing a great job with X. And I'd really like you to watch this, and then we can talk about that. And then you try it. And then she comes in and watches while you're doing it. So it's really more about the model of professionalism than people being just defensive about their thing, whatever their thing is. And you're right. I mean, in the perfect world, we're all open to constructive criticism, right? That's the ideal. But emotion gets in the way, pride gets in the way, experience gets in the way. I get that. But all I can do is deal with what I'm faced with in the moment, right? And so I always try to develop a relationship with someone, ensure that I'm focused on the goals that they themselves have set, that I'm recognizing commendations as well as recommendations, and that I'm being very objective in the feedback that I'm giving so that they recognize the benefit of it. And it's not just a challenge to them as a teacher. It's really an opportunity to improve and move forward in a positive way. And again, that's where relationships come in. That's where trust comes in. And you have to be able to de-escalate situations. And when a teacher comes in and they're feeling attacked, right, and their hackles are up, we have to be able to feel them, right?
Yeah.
Feel where they are, and then navigate through that, de-escalate the emotion, and really get down to what's important. And when you remind a teacher that this is not about you, this is about your students,
right?
That tends to get their attention.
I have one more personal experience on this. Is it's all about timing as well. So whenever I have to give feedback, I know I have to control my urge of giving out feedback immediately. I would rather try to know where they are at that moment. Are they right now thinking and trying to achieve something, and they're in a hectic situation? Are they in a zone of taking feedback? Are they in a zone of discussion? So
Right.
I try to ask them very explicitly that, hey, I want to talk to you about something which is related to, let's say, your assessment strategy or poor mathematics score right now coming out in the last 2 academic years. So let's take out a time. So I think when I explicitly mention that what's my agenda and I seek a time, I think people come a little bit prepared. They tend to be much more open rather than just picking up discussions randomly. I think it has very rarely landed to where I wanted the outcome to be. And so, yeah, I think timing is something that I found is over and above than even the approach.
Yeah, no, that's that absolutely true. And the ed eval system in Massachusetts is based around that whole timing thing. There's a cycle. We start with a reflection on the previous year and how things went, a revisiting of goals that were set previously. Then we use that to build goals for the current year, whether we continue with a similar goal or we change it. Then we go into observations, formative, summative, etc. So you're absolutely correct. There's the timing piece. But I would suggest that as important as it is for me to be an evaluator and to work with you as an educator, it's equally as important to, again, put it on teachers to work together to recognize a school-wide focus. Right. And so the greatest success I've had, I shouldn't say that. Let me reframe. The greatest success we've had as educators in a building when I was principal came when teachers recognized a challenge in the building, and then they worked together with us, administration, to identify what's going on, why it's going on, and how we were going to fix it. And, one of the things that always arises is the instructional core, right? Mm-hmm. Students, teachers, and curriculum together in the educational process. And if you're bringing high quality curricular materials to the classroom and you're working strategically with teachers to improve instruction and kids are engaged, then you're going to get good outcomes.
Right.
But if one of those three things is not in place, then there's an issue. So, for example, when I was in East Hampton, there was some dynamite teachers that identified that students were having trouble persevering with difficult tasks, right? And so in order to deal with that, the teachers really brought on a model of collaboration where they were visiting each other's classrooms and identifying what was working and what wasn't working as well as it could be working. And then they would be working in each other's classrooms to see how to do it well. And that dynamic of trust and empowerment really took that school and those outcomes from here to here. We went from a level 3 school to a level 1 school. I wish I could say it was because of me. It wasn't. It was because of us. And that, again, circles back to what I'm talking about. It's not about control. It's about empowerment. It's about a recognition of our roles and responsibilities and how we can work together to improve outcomes.
Wow. No, love it. Love it. And congratulations for that achievement.
Thank you. It was many years ago. It was back in the 2000s, but it was 2000, 8?
Oh, wow.
Something like that. It was a while ago.
Makes sense. Okay. I want to talk about the teacher retention issue as well, because it's very closely related to culture, because research shows that not only teachers, but in general professionals, they leave a job not because of pay issues, but more because of lack of respect, lack of trust, lack of great coordination with the manager. That's the highest reason to actually cause attrition in any school district or any organization. So, and I saw the teacher retention or teacher leaving is a problem right now, even at your school district. Is it right? And how are you dealing with it?
I think really, I would agree with everything you just said. The complicating factor in the data, I would say, is COVID. In that COVID bubble, we lost a lot of people that were excellent educators for a variety of reasons. And the post-COVID pressure to get back to where we were with respect to student outcomes was daunting for many people. Superintendents, principals, teachers, everybody was leaving the profession. So it's definitely challenging. I don't know that I would say that that's a rampant problem in the district. I mean, there's always a level of retirement kind of cycling out. So in year 2, for me, that's one of the data points I haven't really focused on, but I have tried to focus on the things that keep people in, right? Culture, climate, trust, relationships. And the other dynamic that you have to think about is budget. I mean, the challenge of budgets. We had to make cuts in 4 of our 5 schools. One school we had to make, I think it was 8.5 or 9 FTEs. So everybody felt it a little bit. So there's a lot more at play, I would say. But in order to keep people, they have to feel that they are worth. That they have worth in the educational relationship. That they are trusted to implement and put strategies in place that engage students in the classroom. That they feel the support and have the resources they need to succeed. And when all those things happen, I think people stay, especially when professionals create an environment of collaboration and they trust their leaders to support them, to have their back, if you will, but also that they're getting the feedback they need to improve. They're getting the resources they need, the professional development they need to develop and improve and become the best that they can be. But education is a difficult profession. And a lot of people look at it and say, oh, you only work 182 days, but I don't know a teacher that works 182 days. And they say, oh, you only work 6-7 hours. Well, I don't know a teacher that works 6-7 hours a day, because they're doing it all till 5 o'clock anyway. So it's a tough gig. It's a difficult profession, but one of the most rewarding professions, I would say, around is when a student comes up to you, 10 years down the line, or a parent comes up to you and says, my son, my daughter is here. And they said it was when you listened, when you heard them, when you helped them when they're going through something that really drove them to succeed. And that's what, kind of gives me chills thinking about the effect that we have as educators.
No, absolutely. But tell me one thing, like right now, every district is facing some kind of budget cuts because of the uncertainty of the federal funds. How much was your dependency on that as a district? And also because of that, you must have to cut down some programs. I was reading that you guys have cut down your arts program a little bit. So it must have upset a lot of people, especially the teachers who were running it. So how do you manage those kind of situations? Because trust is one place, but now it's about existential, right?
Right. Yeah. No, indeed. The uncertainty around some of the directives and some of the realities that we're facing at the federal level cause anxiety amongst teachers, amongst counselors, amongst families, and then the initial reporting that we were going to lose all our title funds, right? Title I, Title II funding. That has now drawn back. So we're in Massachusetts anyways, we're still keeping those funds from the federal government that are integral to the work we're doing, especially with low income and special ed students, which is important. But you're right, the arts are often one of the first cut. And, so it's really a conversation with the principal and with the department heads to ensure that the services aren't going to go away. So, for example, in one of our schools, we had 3 art teachers, and even though one of those positions was cut, we were able to keep the offerings that we had before because we were in a good situation, if you call it that, where we had low class sizes. So that loss wasn't as dire as it could have been. Whereas at one of the elementary schools, we did cut an art teacher. And so we're going to try and bring art to some interdisciplinary work with STEAM. Are you familiar with that? The science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So that's kind of that integrated approach is one of the things we're trying to do. But you're right. It's disheartening when you see your peers as a teacher, their position cut because of the funding. And, we just listened to a regional webinar yesterday, and they're talking about future cuts that the governor of Massachusetts might have to make because revenues aren't keeping up to speed. Yeah. And so, in any place, right, whether it's a business or a classroom or a school, you have to respond to the situation that you're faced with. And so the initial reaction of anger or emotion, okay, you got to get through that and you have to respond. And what are we going to do to meet the needs of the students, knowing that we have this loss of a teacher? And it's difficult. You're absolutely correct. And it's disheartening. And that actually gets the parents going. And that's where things start changing, is when the parents and the community says, you know what, we're gonna fund this override so that we can bring this position back. Or we're going to look for grants to do X, Y, or Z. So yeah, it's daunting. It's a challenging role to be in. It's there's a lot of variables that keep you up at night, that wake you up at night, and then keep you up at night. And the financial situations that we're facing in Massachusetts, specifically and across the United States, generally, certainly are disconcerting.
Right. Now, I definitely want to talk about that. The way AI has evolved in the last few years, it has got a mixed response from educators. But I saw that I think your district is rolling out Canamigo this year. Is it? And
is doing what now? I'm sorry.
Are you guys rolling out Canamigo this year?
I'm not. Well, one of the things we're looking at with respect to AI is an AI policy. I think everybody is behind the curve on that, and not the students, of course. It's a tool that they are all over, and even educators, superintendents are using it. The capacity of AI to do a qualitative analysis. You asked the question before and I failed to answer it, is how do you get feedback? I send Google Forms out to teachers, to principals, to stakeholders, and then you have to kind of get through all that data. AI can do a great job of synthesizing that and finding the themes in that qualitative analysis. So that's how I get feedback, other than a one-on-one meeting with someone, is send out a Google form, grab that data, review it, and see what people are saying about how did I do with respect to X, Y, or Z. So I think AI is a tool, just like any other. And, any tool that comes into education, I think there's pushback initially, but at some point we reach a place of kind of equilibrium and acceptance and say, okay, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Processing is not going anywhere. Back in the day, AI is not going anywhere. It's just going to get more and more powerful. So we have to have a policy on how it's going to be used responsibly and effectively in the classroom, by teachers, by students, and by the professionals in the building. So I don't know. I'm not familiar with the AI platform you were just talking about, but the AI generally is here to stay, and students are going to use it, and we have to make sure that we're using it to the benefit of learning and education, as opposed to as a crutch to learning and education.
Yeah, absolutely. I think schools become the beacon of any new innovation for the people, and they have to lead by example. And so right now, a lot of educators do feel that their job might be at threat, or their work might be at threat. So have you felt those? Because since we're talking about culture of trust, did that question popped up, and did you have to address that? And if yes, how did you do that?
Yeah. I think it has, because people are worried about it. And there's the worry about the fundamental student creating an essay or for solving a problem using AI instead of their own head. There's that worry, but there's also the worry about, oh my God, this thing could teach. But I would suggest that we're never going to replace that personal interaction, that personal relationship that is in the classroom. Because in COVID, we went virtual, right? We went online, and the screen just can't replace, in my estimation, that interaction between the teacher and the student in the presence of curriculum, and that's the instructional core.
No, I think I agree with you that the frontline workers, who are interacting with the students, they still have something to be confident about. That again, every parent wants to send to their kids to the school to have those kind of ideals, those kind of influencing people that can set my child in the right track. But there are a lot of people in the back end, the administrative works, the legal, the finance, who doesn't have an interaction with, who are not kids first, right? So,
Right.
and as a superintendent, you have to manage that part of the workforce also, because they become the backbone of running the entire show. So
Right.
have you heard any kind of concerns coming in from that angle? Any kind of intent to block, since you guys are making the policy? People like, we should block it.
I haven't yet. I think we're a little early in the conversation. We're seeing automation in factories really replacing, and that has happened over time, right? Robots doing what people used to do. And I think that's the natural progression of technology. Technology comes and makes our life easier. And at some point, there's a person that's being replaced by the robot. And in this case, maybe it's AI is programming, right? It sounds like that's where we're going. Could the AI be doing the accounting on the background that my business manager, assistant business manager is doing? And I don't know if we're there yet. I don't know if the trust in the tool is there yet, but at some point it's going to be. And I think in that moment, one of the things I've personally tried to work on and that I've been a proponent of is response versus reaction. In that moment, we have to respond thoughtfully and move forward as best we can in a positive way. Because what I find is that when we react, that's the problem, right? That visceral knee jerk, that anger, whatever it is, to this AI thing, right? That's not going to solve any problem. We have to respond to the situation. And I think that's part of what we have to be adherents of, is response versus reaction. So I can't worry about it. It might wake me up at 3 a.m, but I have to get my sleep, and then I have to respond to the situation. So if AI comes out with this program that does the accounting, well, maybe it's going to save me some money, and I'm not going to have 3 people doing the job. I can just have one person doing it.
No, I agree. And I think that is one of the reasons that the policy themselves should try to, direct the people to upskill themselves. So even if I am looking at the finance in a district, I need to start looking at finance and budget cuts or grant writing or some other things that I should pick up and start being more productive, because I can and I should.
Yes.
I think that's a mindset that people have to start building up early to be relevant, and they should be start comfortable using AI, because the benchmark of your output has just gone up. So the achievement gap or the inequity will just keep on rising if you're not keeping up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key, right? So we have to have a policy that allows us to take advantage of the tool. And so whether that's a grant writer using it to synthesize a bunch of ideas for narrative, or if it's a superintendent taking a bunch of data and synthesizing it for some qualitative analysis, or it's a student using a tool, right, to improve their product. a teacher improving lesson plans. So you're absolutely correct. The policy has to put us in place to use the technology to move ourselves forward. We can't just, you know, block our eyes and hope it's going to go away. It's not going anywhere.
No, I definitely agree with that. And also, I think like very soon that you'll have to start looking at the communication strategy as well, with respect to parents as well, because they're going to come up asking all sort of questions that my child is using AI for companionship, my child is using AI for mental health, they're using it for tutoring or career guidance. So how should I look about it? So how do you communicate that to parents? Teachers needs to upskill themselves really quickly,
Right.
because even if they don't ask for it, they have to answer because they
Right.
become the kind of one who kind of guards between the student and the teachers and the parents. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a new challenge where trust has to be built up for the public school system. Okay, I have my last question around the culture part.
Okay.
A lot of schools are facing especially the public school districts are facing the problem of decline in enrollments, right? And every year decreasing. Is that a problem that you guys are also facing?
It is, especially in the rural and the regional systems. Declining enrollment's a challenge. Massachusetts has what's called school choice. And unfortunately, or fortunately, so in West Hampton, our enrollment's going down, but we opened up school choice. And so we're grabbing some students that from surrounding communities. So it's almost like we're stealing from each other with respect to that. So school choice is one thing that is a good thing, I think, because it allows parents some choice to identify what's best for their kids. But you're right, enrollment is going down. Our high school actually is doing pretty well. People like to come to Hampshire Regional. People like the rural or the regional, I should say, aspect of Hampshire Regional, though our elementary school enrollments aren't as robust as we would want them to be. And that's a function of housing. That's a function of an aging population in a community. So there's a lot going on there, but the funding is tied to enrollment. And so there's that challenge too. So we're looking to the state to try and the state of Massachusetts to really assess what's happening in the regionals and the rurals. We have a community of educators that are advocating and working with legislators and putting the needs of our schools, our students on the table so they're aware of them. And I have to be honest, Massachusetts is one of the best educational systems in the United States, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And I think part of the reason for that is the teachers and the system that prepares them to be educators, and then the professional development that's available to them, the work that they do in collaboration with each other across districts, across schools. There's a lot going on in Massachusetts that's good, and we're going to respond to the challenge of declining enrollment the best that we can by assessing why and then doing what we can do to redress the issue.
No, I'm glad you are addressing it head on rather than beating behind the bush. So
Yep.
that's the first step to solve anything, because the trust with the parent community, maybe they're losing them to charter schools or they're losing them to homeschooling now. And
Yep.
also, like recently, I've been hearing a lot of issues with immigrant population as well. They're feeling, because Massachusetts attracted a lot of immigrants because of the university towns. It has a bunch of Ivy Leagues, which has attracted international crowd for decades. And of course, now there are even second generation, third generation immigrants who are technically Americans, but still they have that kind of existential issues in that category. So any kind, because I was talking to another school leader where she has to actually reach out to the family saying that school is going to be a safe place. You don't need to worry about it. So have you felt any kind of issues on that regard?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the, when we talked about the the mandates and the executive actions that were coming out of the federal government, that was one of those things that caused huge anxiety of our in our immigrant populations. And we don't have a huge immigrant population, but we do have students and families that were feeling attacked, that were feeling targeted. And so we too messaged those stakeholders and said, hey, this is a safe place. And I mean, I could share with you the message I sent out because I wanted people to know that we heard them, we felt them, right? The concern, the anxiety that they were feeling, it was being communicated through teachers and counselors, and people were really afraid. And that's not okay. That's not all right when the government makes people afraid. So it was our role, our responsibility to respond and let them know that we care about them. We're going to take care of them. And here are resources. And that was the other thing we tried to do, was provide resources so that they had someone they could talk to around the legal ramifications of those executive orders, someone that they could reach out to and get support from extant agencies so that they could get some information in their native language so that they understood what's going on. And you're right, that was some scary stuff, and it still is. If you watch, I mean, it's almost like you don't even want to watch the news anymore. Right. But a lot of that action, if you will, from that part of the government right now is happening in the urban settings, not necessarily in the rural and the regionals. But it's sad to see on the news. It's scary to see if you are an immigrant family, and it's certainly are our students from abroad going to come back this year? Right. That's what I've heard on the news is the universities are worried about their enrollment because those students from other countries, are they going to come back? Are they going to be allowed to come back and go to school? Are they going to be safe to do those things? So it's really unfortunate that those mandates and executive orders are causing fear and anxiety in people. That's not really it's not what we should be doing. We should be helping and caring and providing compassion.
No, definitely. These kind of discussion all definitely derails the goals that you have on an everyday basis, the new challenges coming up. And this definitely puts things like 10 steps back to where it is. So as a superintendent or a school leader, you don't want to deal with new problems, which like not even helping the kids. So,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did cover a lot of discussion about how do you do confrontation, the teacher retention issue, the culture of trust as a superintendent, the policy or the leadership policy that you have. Anything that you want to share that I haven't touched upon or we haven't talked about?
I guess the last thing I would want to say is the most important thing that we are charged with as educators are the students that are in front of us. And we always have to remember that what we do has to be in the best interest of them. And despite the challenges, despite the distractions, despite the executive orders, we have to keep them center place in our thoughts, in our practice, in our policies. And those relationships that we build with them last a lifetime. And as I was saying to you before we started, those are the things that's the reason we do this job, is because of those relationships, those positive effects we have on students. And, we love our kids, we care about them, and we want to do what's right for them so that they can take our place when we're moving on.
No, absolutely. I love that ending remark, but it has been a fantastic conversation. Honestly, Vito, I actually got really excited about few takeaways that I definitely would implement in my organization as well. And I'm
Excellent.
sure a lot of school leaders will also think about it in that way. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed it and definitely exceeded the time limit because the conversation just flew, right? And yeah, let's be in touch. And again, thank you so much.